Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Business Barbershop Podcast. I am Chris,
I'm keen.
and we are sitting fireside today. If you couldn't tell, the fire's warm and it's crackling. You guys can't hear it, but we can. And we're here to talk about a bunch of fun stuff. We actually have things to talk about today, big list. So it should be fun. I thought we would start with an update on our real estate project. This is just really more for my memories than for your entertainment, although it is kind of interesting to see what's going on. So I think we've been out for a couple of weeks. So we I don't remember where we were at the last time, but we've closed on the deal, which is
hmm
cool. We have, you know, access to the property, obviously, and demolition has already begun. And it's well on two of the units. Two of the units still have tenants in them, but but things are moving, and demolition has happened also in the common area. So we're
Yep.
basically redoing the whole thing. Not really going down to studs necessarily, but a pretty major update to basically everything. So
hmm
um, it's been it's been it's funny. I think because I remember I've built a house once in my life.
Yep.
This is the part where everything seems to happen really really fast, and I think everything takes. It seems like everything is going to go really really slow for like a little while when they start to like do some of the electrical stuff and some of the plumbing stuff and some of the behind the scenes stuff where you show up and although things have been getting done, you don't really notice a change in the like aesthetic,
Right.
of the place. So that's kind of where we're at on that, right? So it's going pretty good. We're meeting up with Vitaly this afternoon to I think we're gonna kind of pick whatever. I don't know what we're gonna do exactly, but we're gonna talk to him about some logistical things. So that'll be fun. And it's a real project. So that's cool.
Yeah.
What are your
Yeah.
thoughts? What are your thoughts? Any thoughts?
um, it's the most extensive cosmetic remodel I've ever done. Um, because it's mostly cosmetic.
Yeah.
There's other than the retention wall and some structural stuff to the deck in Tom's place, almost everything is just cosmetic.
Yeah. And we're
Um,
moving pipes because we're moving the kitchen's basically closed in. So we're
yeah, I
opening
was,
that up a little bit. So there is like some movement of electrical, some movement of plumbing, but it's not significant. I would
no,
is the way I would
no,
describe it.
it's very minor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, finish your thought.
Yeah, it's a big cosmetic remodel. It'll take a handful of months being done, but it should be a fun project. What makes it a lot of work is the fact that we're doing lots of things that are not in a typical like flip style remodel or renovation remodel. So because of that, it creates a lot of little extra things to watch for. Um, so yeah, it's the I would say it is my first time of doing something that I would call I think almost everybody in this industry would say things that are like a decent property in a good location with all new finishes might be like a luxury remodel, but this is the first one that we're doing that we're using real luxury type features in it. Lime wash, micro cement, you know, handled appliances on a property that's actually going to be retained. It's not common that you get to do all those things on a property that you're holding on to.
Right.
But it just penciled that you could save about 50 to 60 grand of higher end material and the deal still would have penciled. We would have been into each unit for closer to around 600 instead of 650 and had an ARV of like mid eights. But by spending the extra 50, we basically get an extra 50 to $100,000 in value that when it comes time that you actually might sell it, you might be able to get more than that. But we're just taking a conservative approach to it. But it'll be fun. It's gonna be a fun project.
Yeah.
So,
And you get to keep it too, like you get to use it. It's a it's
hmm
a it's a place that you would really actually probably want to go and chill for a weekend or
yeah, I mean, this is my 18th door in the neighborhood, I think. Is that right? No, 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 in West Seattle. But in this neighborhood, it's my 11th one. And And even the ones that we remodeled are, we could tell exactly what we're doing it for, and it works great for that profile, but it doesn't necessarily fit well for like my family to use it, where this one, you know, it would be. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And also what's kind of cool, and I you probably thought about this already, but I didn't. But because they're all there, we could actually all go hang out there at the same time
Oh
if we
yeah, I've already
wanted
thought
to,
about that. Yeah,
you
if that
know?
wasn't if that so John and I already talked about it. And remember where I was kind of like, oh man, like I would just be happy help working on it. And you're like, no, you need to be in the deal. Remember we had that
Yeah.
conversation?
Yeah.
Well, the easy answer as to why, because in my world, it's not that I couldn't use another value add property and add another piece of the portfolio. It's just I have a lot, right?
Yes.
Um, that the reality that if I own a unit, like there's like two personal things. I promised my brother that I would help him do a deal. So here we go. We're co-owning our unit together.
Yep.
But the so it kind of like checks that off the box. But I also but no question, like I thought, yeah, we should all pick a week or weekend in the summer and all of us block it out and go there together.
Yeah.
That actually in many ways was almost the biggest driving factor for me because I don't have anything that would fit that profile. I mean, I could block out like a multi-unit of my own complex and have my friends there, but that's not it, then I'm blocking out all of my properties for my friends' use. It's just a different kind of thing, you know,
Yeah.
versus like, oh, look, we're all there. Let's all use it at the same time, you know.
Yeah. Plus,
Um,
it's cool because like like the beaches right there. There's a bunch of restaurants. There's like stuff we could go and do, too, which is kind of fun.
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much time you spent in that neighborhood prior to this deal, but because I grew up in this area, I know you grew up in Kansas, so I grew up in this area. When my friends and I were just old enough to drive, there was two places that we would go to in the summertime. We'd play basketball in Green Lake, and then we'd go, hang out in Alki. And Alki more than Green Lake. Green Lake was more of like because you don't go in Green Lake. Green Lake's not a lake you
Right.
swim in or anything.
Yep.
So you go there like you go there primarily for us when I was growing up was to go there to play basketball to do a pickup game. And so you know it it you know it's been a place that I have gone to since I was a child. And my parents, since they first came here from New York, they almost bought a place over there. And my mom was telling me how her sister told her she was crazy to spend that much for a little house over there, and now she regrets listening to her. And it's
Right.
just, but it's just like, yeah, you can't ask people for real estate advice in an area that she lives in Queens. You don't know what the neighborhoods look like over here.
Yep.
You know, um, you know, um, we could make the same argument of like, what if you bought a small house in one of the most prestigious neighborhoods in New York? You would probably say, absolutely, you should buy it if you can get it for that price.
Yeah.
And so it's just a reference to knowing the area. But it's the short version of it is that um, there's really only there's two small places that people love to go to in the summertime. There's of course parks all over the place, but like they're very well known to the public. Those two places I mentioned, and of course any of the beach parks that are on Lake Washington, and there's a bunch of them, right?
Yeah.
Um, but if you want a regular beach, not a lake beach, like real ocean water, even though this isn't straight to the Pacific. This is the sound that connects to the Pacific. It is ocean water. There's
Yep.
seals, there's orcas out there, so it kind of gives you this great beach feeling without having to have the weather problems of being on the shoreline. That's kind of the beauty of the Puget Sound, and that's really, I would say, probably one of the most out of all the areas that kind of have like there's a bunch of sister cities to Seattle, like Vancouver, Portland. I'd even say San Francisco feels like a sister city to Seattle. But one thing that makes Seattle so unique to the other Pacific Northwest style type cities, obviously San Francisco's, they call it the Bay Area, but has a very similar demographic in terms of like, what it looks like and so forth and how the landscape looks, is that we have this shoreline of the Puget Sound that is, basically like a bunch of canals that
Yep.
we don't get, even though it's ocean water, you don't get the temperamental waves. I think I heard someone tell me that some of the canals, like the canal, there's more like shellfish life there, like oyster farms there have like more oysters there than any other place in the world.
Oh, really? I believe that.
Hmm. Because it's
Yeah.
just this, this very long, skinny, kind of sheltered area with all the land around it, you know. So it's a lot more temperamental when you get on the coast, right? The waves are
Yeah.
bigger, the winds are stronger, and it's not super warm here. So those bigger winds and all that, it gets cold and stuff like that. So has all the things you want out of the ocean, and kind of eliminates a lot of things you don't want, for being so far north.
Yeah.
So you get orcas, you get seafood, you get seals running around. You don't get
You
the
got the
heavy
ferries
winds.
driving by, you know,
Hmm
it's
But
cool. It's a cool vibe
yeah, but you don't get these heavy waves and these super
for sure.
strong winds.
Yep.
Um, and they do a good job with the beach park there.
Yeah.
Um, it actually, I don't know if you know the history of it, but Alki was the founding place for the city of Seattle.
Okay. I did not know that.
Yeah, so the original settlers came to Alki. They met the Duwamish there, and they pictured that whole neighborhood being downtown Seattle. But the shoreline was very shallow, so it's too hard to bring port,
Boats
to
in.
make a port there. Yeah, so they just, obviously they could, like, once you got north of like Harbor Point, you can kind of look over to the bay and say, oh, okay, actually over there it's still very, the land to the
Yeah.
sound gets very deep in that pocket. So they just pivoted over there. But this was some of the oldest houses are in the city are in this neighborhood, um, because it's a founding place, and that's actually so the name Alki is actually a Duwamish word for soon to come or soon to be, and the reason why they named it that was because they wanted to name Seattle, the new New York, because New York was the New York from
Right.
England. And they wanted
Yep.
this to be the newer New York of the West Coast. They wanted this to be basically the West Coast version of New York, which I would say is more, San Francisco is more of the West Coast New York, but that's what
Yeah.
they envisioned when they created the city. And that's why they named the neighborhood Alki, was because the idea was that this was going to be the New York that was to come. Um,
Nice.
and then it transitioned to something else. It ended up being more because they obviously it was really nice for the summers and all that. So after they repositioned the city to downtown Seattle, they still settled over here, but it was primarily for vacation homes.
Yeah.
So they would hang out in the city, and then they would come over to this area in the summertime and use it for like some. And a lot of the properties they have like these little cabins by the water. That's the history of them. They were used as vacation rentals, um, back in the day. They didn't have big hotels, and so this is what people kind of rented out as vacation rentals. And so a lot of the properties I have there that have like these little like houses kind of crowded on a lot. That's what they're used for. So
Nice. Very
yeah,
nice. Okay, cool. Cool, cool. So we'll keep all you listeners, all four of you in the loop, let you know what's going on.
yeah.
And I think things should be moving. I mean, relatively quickly, right? I mean, just not that. Do we have permits yet?
I believe he got most of his permits. He was working on that
Nice.
prior to closing.
Yep.
So he's supposed to have all of them done by now. If they're not
Cool.
all totally done by now, there's enough work you can work on while he gets other permits in place.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure all the big ones that we wanted were done. The HVAC
Yeah.
one may still be the pending one left.
Yep. Things should be moving pretty quickly. Yeah, I would think, because what, like electrical wise, what are we doing? Can lights, basically. We're gonna move. We're doing
Can
some
lights, we're gonna move
space
some
heater type of stuff, right?
lights.
Aren't we doing? Does that count?
Um,
Does that fall into that, or is that the HVAC?
yeah, I mean, there's already a space heater in the second bedroom, and that probably is just gonna stay. We're just gonna get like a nicer, newer like temperature control, and then the space heaters that are in the rest of the place are gonna get pulled, and that's where we're putting in the mini splits.
We're
That
moving
way,
those around. We're
mhm.
kind of hiding them, right?
Yep, yep. They're gonna be safe. They're gonna be hidden inside of closets and storage spaces with vents, so that way they're not, you don't have the cartridges out on the wall.
Yep. But that's really the only electrical that we're doing for the most part, other than the kitchen, just moving the kitchen stuff around. Same with the
Hmm
plumbing, moving the toilets, one toilet a little bit, I think, right?
Yep,
In
yep. It's
the
gonna go where
master.
that little, yeah, it's gonna move. They're gonna move a little bit closer. They have these little storage closet things in there, these kind of weird storage things, and those are going away.
Yeah.
So,
Things are moving. It's gonna be fun. Could be
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Got to get her done, I think.
yeah.
World Cup is
It's
when? June? When's the World Cup?
June,
July?
middle of June. Hmm
So we want to be done before that for sure. For
Yeah,
sure. If we
yeah.
can.
Well, what we'll probably do is obviously he's working on both, and we don't want to slow him down for both. But if it gets closer to the event and we feel like we're running out of time, then we might like say, okay, let's get some guests in there and tell them that there's some construction happening in the common areas and get the units done.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that way you can start renting them. That's something that we can always chat with them about. But I think that that's a conversation you wait to find out if
For
it's
sure.
even necessary.
I was going to say, like timeline. Do you think it's going to be close? Do you think it'll take that long? I mean, you know, just how Vitali works. You know how the
I
you
do think
know
it's going to be close because it's not just the construction work, it's the common areas. It's
yeah,
also getting them furnished and then getting photos and then
yeah,
getting the listing
that's
created.
true.
And so when you have all those pieces and you add them all together, I think it's going to get tight.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, awesome. All right, moving on.
Yeah.
So we got a couple different topics that we sort of brushed on before we hit the record button. Is there anything in particular that you would like to address first? Anywhere you want to
No,
go
well,
first?
you brought up the idea of talking about the Epstein file releases. I have to admit, I've only glanced at some of it. I think the big one I saw was the Bill Gates one.
Yeah,
Um, and something to the matter of him asking Epstein for some kind of antibiotic that he can like slip into his wife's drink to make sure that she didn't get sick because he contracted something from some Russian girl or something.
right, right. I wonder like what I guess, and I'm not deep into it at all. Okay, so I don't honestly I just don't care that much. I mean, is this salacious? Yes. Is it entertaining? Probably. Does it have a lot of relevance like in the out there in the real world other than the fact that people are making bad choices, when they're at home? I don't know if it does or not. I don't know if Epstein was like blackmailing anybody at that time or making them do anything, like nefarious from like a business or any kind of a standpoint from that. It just sounds like people are making tremendously bad choices with their personal lives and it's been exposed, right?
Yeah, I
um
mean, you
there's the
know,
by the way, I will say this, there's the side of this about like the minor children being involved, which I don't want to poo-poo that, or I don't want to like minimize that, but that part is just not cool at all. But you know, people make bad choices all the time, and they should they get in trouble for them? Yes, but I mean, I don't know what else there is really to. These people are just famous. That's the difference, you know.
I mean, my opinion of it is that you get these people, they they have money, they have power, and everyone always tries to predict what's like to live in their shoes, right? So there's narratives I hear about people who are super rich that I don't agree with. There's some narratives I think I do agree with, and I think that the ones I don't agree with are the ones where people are like, "Oh, well, they're rich and powerful, and they're just doing this to get more rich and powerful." Uh, I I don't find that narrative that much, and I think that that's told by people who don't know what it's like to have wealth above a certain level. Um, I'm not saying I have I'm that wealthy, but there's moments where you taste it, right? Like, look, we have a $20 million real estate portfolio. There's years with
Yeah,
seven-figure active incomes. And if you have a real estate portfolio that makes you cash flow and gives you tax shelters, you're making a seven-figure active income to boot. If I don't go buy some new mansion, a yacht, exotic cars, right? There's only a handful of things that you can spend this like absorbent amount of money on. Private jets, mansions, yachts, exotic cars, extremely expensive collectibles, right? If you take those off the table, you know, life between a billionaire and a multimillionaire doesn't look that different. You get to choose what you want to do for work. You can choose how much work you want to do. You can pretty much eat any kind of food you want. You can wear any kind of clothes that you want. So like there's there's only so many different kinds of experiences and material items you can get. And of course, people just start to buy more expensive the same things, but it's not like people are going to just like become evil and like, well, I'm going to do this to make more money just so I can go from having two Ferraris to a garage full of them. That's just it's an unrealistic expectation
yeah,
that people have when they get to a certain wealth level. I've talked to a lot of people who make a good amount of money, help them build more wealth doing the investments that we do, and the trend for people who make about a 600 plus $1,000 active income and have $5+ million in net worth, and are in their prime earning years, when I help them do investments, the general goal for most of these people who are investing with me is let's find a way to sustain this lifestyle with the active job away. Like they're not even like stretching to try to get that house on Lake Washington or the private jet or the yacht. I don't hear that from almost any of them. It's like,
Right.
oh, the minute I started making 50 grand a month or more, I realized this is about as good as I need life to be, except for the hours I work and how stressful my job is. So you show me how these investments will replace that income. And almost all of them are like, we're good. Like if this just replaces
Yeah.
my income, I'm good. Right.
Yep.
And to
And
know
yeah.
and to have this conversation so many times with people, it's hard to believe that, like, yes, there's some people who want to get more and these people have achieved more, but like at one point, does it actually that's the driving force? I could tell you for someone who has a lot of those things, it's not my driving force.
Right.
Um,
I think that's the difference between this group of people, and there are there are many, I mean, other very, very successful people, billionaires, and all that kind of stuff that are not involved in this scandal and that are not scandalous at all. And I think the difference between that group of people and this group of people has a lot to do with where you like espouse your value. What I'm trying to say is these people, I think, continue to chase a feeling that um they can't find, which is probably not tied to money at all, but is more tied to like having a good family, like having real friends, you know? Like I think that, when you see people buying all of these things, they're sort of like it's that hedonistic treadmill, where you're just chasing the next dopamine hit or the next distraction
yeah,
because a lot of people spend their entire lives building these fortunes because they think it's going to like produce a certain result, and then when it doesn't, it's just like subconsciously sort of devastating, and you find yourself just chasing these random things or trying to get these feelings from random sexual encounters, for example.
I look, maybe I just watched too much Game of Thrones, but I just feel like that's the one thing that money and power people like I could see, especially men kind of exploiting, which is just like, you know, first season of Game of Thrones, and it's like, you know, Robert Baratheon's married to the beautiful Cersei Lannister, and he doesn't sleep with her. He's just bouncing around from all these other girls, you know?
Yep.
And I just feel like, yeah, I could see that, marriage, not everyone is super happy in their marriage. And things can look good on the surface. You spend so much time making things look good on the surface, but it doesn't mean, you know, you're going to you have everything you feel like you want out of your intimate relationships, and maybe it is very, there's different ways to kind of look at it. Oh, he's just a pig. Oh, he's addicted to sex and blah, blah, blah. You can say all these different things. But at the end of the day, there's one truth, right? We all have one life to live. Everyone makes their own priorities. And for some people, they make that stuff important enough that they would roll some of these risks. But I'm just thinking about this practically, right? In my head, I'm thinking to myself, like, why would you ever do that here? Couldn't you just like go fly somewhere? But the other part of it, it's like if you're Bill Gates, I'm not trying to justify what the guy did. I'm just trying to in my head play out how this goes. There, if you're Bill Gates, there's someone who always knows exactly where you're at,
For
and
sure.
you should have a good reason for being there. And so even if he said, oh, he should just you know, go to the Czech Republic, you know, um, and and go to these kind of more poor Eastern European countries, you can find the same girls. They'd be happy to accommodate for you, and no one's ever tracking all the stuff that's happening. But I think that the reality is that you can just kind of piece it together. And to me, it's like it's not that surprising to me. It's like, oh, well, you're doing business with Jeffrey Epstein at the time. He's a prestigious, hedge fund manager out of New York, and he owns an island. And there's politicians and British royalty going there. And if there's other things happening there that everyone else doesn't know, but the small circle knows, then it seems like a safe place to be able to tell your people, hey, tell my assistant to book a. I'm putting this in the calendar, and if my spouse, my wife sees it, they're not freaking out about it. It's like, you know, I to me, it's like, yeah, of course that can and does and will happen. It just doesn't surprise me at
Yeah.
all. I actually think it's one of the curses of being that famous. You know, quite frankly, you know what I mean? Like you're too famous that everyone's going to know who you are, so you're trying to find some safe place to kind of like get whatever you have in your system out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Also, look, people are just different too. Like I mean, to 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 have that kind of focus and drive, like it's not normal, and it's great for the world, but it's probably not super healthy, like personally, like boots on the ground. You probably don't have a lot of close relationships. You probably burned bridges with people that you the thing is, you may not even wish you wouldn't have burned them because you're chasing this thing that you just can't get away from.
Look,
But
we all want companionship, right?
yeah,
And if you're not getting what you want out of your marriage, and I think that this people could call people could call Bill Gates a dirtbag for it, but it to me it's kind of obvious. Like, well, I mean, look at the guy. If he wasn't rich and famous, he looks like a nerd.
yeah,
He's not gonna girls aren't gonna be flocking to him. If girls are flocking to him, it's because they know who he is and they're all a liability risk. So he needs a safe place if he wants to be able to get some companionship. Like I think it's a curse almost in some way. You know what
yeah,
I mean?
definitely.
Um, and in actuality, like this is where I feel like you really, for men, there's really two different ways that this ends up happening. If you don't feel like you're getting it out of your marriage, then you look for some kind of scapegoat like this, and everyone can say whether it's right or wrong, but people somehow can kind of say it's kind of gross. The fact that, you know, Robert Kraft has a girlfriend super young, same with Bill Belichick, or that Leonardo DiCaprio has never dated a girl older than 25. But we all quietly accept it a little bit more because he's not married, right?
Yeah,
And so, like, for someone who says, like, hey, you know, uh, Melinda Gates in her, she's a pretty enough middle-aged woman that, especially in her younger years, they meet in the office. If Bill Gates wasn't who he is, she's probably a catch for him, right? So it seems like a decent match. Plus, whatever she was in the field. But like, if in their marriage he felt like he wasn't getting what he wanted out of this one life, and he's trying to live this like perfect family life, and he just hasn't sowed his wild oats, then I'm like I said, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying like, can I see that happening? I'm like, of course. Look, the
yeah.
guy's a dork. The guy's a
Also, look,
dork,
people
and he's
cheat all the
too.
time. People cheat all the time. They don't have to
People
be
cheat all
rich.
the time. He's super rich. He's super famous, right?
Yeah,
And she's probably the perfect normal wife, and he's probably not getting everything he's hoping for out of whatever out of it. But just like, I don't know. Like, I'm not in their marriage. I have no idea what the relationship is. But
yeah,
if you're asking me if I'm shocked by it, I'm like, really, it's like, look, some people, like you said, some people just cheat. I mean, what was that website that got like where all these names got leaked because people were cheating?
yeah, yeah.
Madison something. I can't remember.
I know what you're talking about.
It's like he could never log into that site.
No,
You know what
probably
I
not.
mean?
No.
And so it's like, if like I said, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying like it's actually pretty normal human behavior that just gets kind of blown up because they're rich and famous.
Yeah,
Um, and so like I'm just like whatever, because at the end of the day, uh, you know, like I said, we can kind of joke about like Bill Belichick's girlfriend being half his age, or DiCaprio never dating someone's over 25. But I think that kind of answers the whole question, right? Like you're if you're rich and famous and already have a family started and married, then you might be kind of envious of the person who has that life. And so this is your way that, are you rich? Are you rich enough that you can kind of have your cake and eat it too? Like, King Robert Baratheon from King of Thrones. I mean, he's kind of the American version of the same thing.
yeah,
Whatever.
yep,
I'm just
yep,
happy. I'm just happy that I'm really happily married and I've got a hot wife, and that I don't have to like, but I mean, do I have friends who are unhappy in their relationships? You
right.
know, all the time, you know? And where that leads, I'm just like, I'm not here to judge,
Yep.
because
Same.
one day we'll all be in the ground. And when it happens, no one remembers that many of the good or bad things you did. So just you got to do you. But you
Yep.
should, but there are long-term effects of some of these decisions that we make, right? And it might seem silly that they would risk so much. But if you're asking me to like reverse play out, it's just like when we talk about like politics. Remember we talked about politics and I was having this conversation with you about, you know, I'm not saying I agree with socialism, but I can see exactly how it's happening. Everyone has the same vote, right? People get these positions of power, they don't want to let it go. And there's like this trickle effect of these decisions that happen. And I don't have to agree with it. Like I could think that, yeah, these are like we got ourselves in a bad place. Like those guys got themselves in a bad space on that stupid island. But like tracking how you got there, to me, it seems super obvious. Like when people are like, I can't believe these people think that socialism actually works. I'm like, well, I own assets. When AI is replacing low level jobs, when I hear kids like I have an intern who's telling me his friends are having a hard time getting a job out of college, I can't even imagine what it's like to be in that group and think about how they can't even enter owning a place. And then they hear stories about people like me who I'm like, oh, I'm buying my 31st property with my friends just so I can hang out with them
Right.
once a week. The conversation we just had a couple of minutes ago, like a lot of them are probably like, well, fuck you. I just
Yeah. Yeah.
you're either like we're in a place where with what's happening with assets, especially income producing assets, it's people there's a divide that's spreading between the haves and have nots. And I'm just when people ask me my opinion is like, well, I'm glad to be a Roman in Roman times. This is the best country to live in. And getting ahead where you're financially ahead is not an easy thing to figure out, but I'm very grateful that I've figured enough of it out that I feel like we're going to be good. And I
Yeah.
know that we're better than the average in that space. And but I don't know what it feels like to have worked for 25 years and feel like you're never going to get there, or just entering that space feeling like it's impossible to get there. I will say this, the jobs that I had in my early 20s where I saw that the ceiling was too short and wasn't going to be where I wanted, I I definitely felt like I needed to break this trend to find a way to get into a different space that if I get stuck just climbing this corporate ladder and getting this like modest low six-figure job, maybe 20 years from now, having climbed the ladder in the space I was in, I'm like, fuck that. I am not
Yep.
okay with that. And if they're feeling that same way, I get it. It's just whether or not they have the resources, the aptitude, the drive, the intelligence, the network, because success does require some luck, right? A lot of it is created,
Yeah. It
but
does.
there is
Okay. Yes. Yes and no. Okay. Yes and no. You're right. Here's what I think you have to. I think you have to. Just. I don't know that it requires luck. I think it does require though avoiding being tragically unlucky. Okay.
mhm,
Because real talk, what success requires is consistent actions over and over and over and over for a long time with no results, and being able to just keep going for a long time, which means just getting better, which means, like in the business context, continuing to do networking and, like think about how long you did that greatness tracker for, you know what I'm saying? And how long the greatness tracker probably didn't really produce a lot of results for you, but you just kept doing it over and over and over and over again, right?
yep.
What you don't want to avoid, or what you hope never happens, is like the car accident that disables you or something, like.
Well, what I reference is that like people think it takes more luck to be successful than it does. Luck does have a place in success. The book Outliers kind of outlines it, right? Why all the Canadian hockey players are born the same, 90-day window.
Yeah, but that's
But
not
what
the
would you
same. It's not the same though. I don't think that's the same as like the success for just a regular person having a good life.
Sure. Look, let's say that you're a super driven person. He tried to be one of those hockey players and couldn't make it because you didn't fall in that window where you got the best coaches, the best whatever. But if you stay that, you're right. Let me take a step back. I'm not saying that success requires luck for you to reach like my level of success I've had. I feel like anybody with a high school education who's driven can get to where I'm at. But I do think that luck does play a part in someone like Bill Gates becoming who he is. He's literally talked about in the book Outliers, and Malcolm Gladwell breaks it out. He could
Yeah.
be as driven, he could be
Here's
as
what I'll say.
intelligent,
Yeah.
right?
I
And if
don't
he
think
did,
it's luck though. I don't think it's luck. I think because there was everybody else in his school had the same opportunities. He happened to seize those
yeah,
opportunities.
but the
So
book
I
doesn't
mean,
say that. The book doesn't say the circumstances create the success. What it say, like if you read the book, what they're referencing is that if you take a block of people who have the same kind of intelligence, drive, and persistence, there is it. I understand what Malcolm Gladwell was trying to say.
okay, I agree. Okay, that's fine. I'll
He's not
backtrack.
trying to
I
say
I
luck
don't.
changes you from
That's
being
right.
success or failure. What he's saying is that it is an element, and taking his
Yes.
intelligence, his drive, and dropping him in that circumstance did allow him to be
Okay,
more
I'll agree
successful
with
than if
you
he was outside of it.
because we'll say, what if Bill Gates was in Russia?
Or
Probably not
even
going
if
to
he
become Bill Gates,
even the
or even
example they
in
gave in the book, right?
Kansas.
He needed to be in a prestigious neighborhood where the local library actually had computers where he could practice his
Right.
coding in. And if he wasn't, and his parents were already well off living in that neighborhood, otherwise he would never be exposed to it. And that small thing can make
Correct.
a
I
difference,
agree.
right?
Okay. All right. All right. Fine. Fine.
But
I
I do
agree.
I do believe what you said earlier to be true, and I think this is good for listeners to hear. It's funny because sometimes you get so far separated from where you started to where you're at. For if you people ask you like my son and I have having a lot of these conversations lately because he just turned 18, right?
Yep.
And he's about to take an intern job over in North Carolina.
Did he get it?
And
He's going to do
yes,
it.
yeah, he's doing it.
Cool. That's gonna be
And
hard for him, but so good.
exactly. It's going to be great for him. And I remember, like, I've had lots of conversations about trying to guide him to where he could be successful, but I have to remember he doesn't have all my experiences, knowledge, and also the knowledge and experience I talk about are like a buildup from things I started decades ago.
Yeah, you learned it from
It's,
being a dummy too. When you were 18, you were a dumb kid too. You know,
yep.
so was I. So was I.
And there, and so I started getting to the real root of like, what are the things he absolutely has to have to make sure he's successful. And I said, like, look, there's lots of things: mentorship, a good circle, the 5 people you spend most time with, all these things people talk about. But one thing is for sure that I think is above all those things is there has to be a there has to be something in you. Call it drive, call it complacency, but there's got to be a part of you where you just say, "Fuck this! The path that I'm on, I am not going to stay on it, and I will do anything I can to break it." That ambition to break the rhythm of where you're heading towards has to be so strong that you're willing to take on a massive change.
Yeah.
That's half of it. The other half of it is being very stubborn. That it doesn't matter how long you've been working on it, how many times you failed at trying to do it, how much longer it took you to get there than you thought it was going to be. Stubborn enough to say, great, I'm still going to keep working on it. Great,
Yeah.
I'm still going to just take that as a lesson moving forward. It's I really feel like it just those are the two things you have to have. You have to be like, hey, I care enough about this that, and Napoleon Hill talks about it in Think and Grow Rich. He calls it burning your ships, right? Which I think can give a mixed message on what people should do, but you have to be fully committed and very, very driven to make a change and extremely stubborn to not quit. Because the one thing, it's funny because people always like propose business ideas to me sometimes, like, oh, we should do this or do this as add to our business. And I'm very reluctant to take on any new business adventures because I know it's always going to be harder and longer than I think and a lot more
Yeah.
failure on the path. The other reason why I'm very careful on picking it is because I know I am that person who's really stubborn and won't quit. So if I start it, I'm going to keep doing it until I'm successful at it and then decide if I want to continue doing it. But I'm not going to quit. I will never quit because I'm cloaking too hard with it doesn't work. That's what a lot of
Yeah.
people do when they try entrepreneurship. They say it doesn't work. And what they're really supposed to say is what I tried didn't work and I'm supposed to rework it, right?
Yeah.
You're supposed to take that Thomas Edison approach of like just nonstop, fail again, fail again.
Yeah.
And so
People also, yeah.
I'm
Sorry,
very
keep going.
reluctant to
Finish
start
that.
something because I know that I am persistent that way, that I'm not going to let how hard something is be the reason why I quit. And I have to decide if I really want to take that bandwidth on, which is one of the reasons why I've been so reluctant to, start golf. So,
Yeah. Yep, for sure. I think the other thing too that happens with people and we'll wrap this up. We'll go our last topic, and then we'll close it out. But I think the other thing that happens too is people expect, what they're doing to be exciting all the time, and to be fresh and to be fun, and the truth is start to when things start to work, they get boring, in some ways, like incredibly boring, because when you're good at something, you end up doing this sort of the same thing over and over and over again. You just
Right.
get better at it, and you see results and better results from it. But it's not always super exciting. It's very rarely super exciting, you know.
Yep.
And I think people get stuck because it's fun, 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 fun. Then, it's not fun. This means I shouldn't do it. I'm gonna go start something new. Fun, 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 fun. But you never get any traction. You never get
Yep.
anywhere because you don't stick to it. So
Yeah. Yeah. You have to decide very early on how committed you're going to be to this. You have to have those conversations with yourself. I remember Kobe talking about it where he said, he doesn't have to motivate himself to work out every day when he was working out because to him, he had already made the commitment. He already made the contract to himself. So there isn't a decision to be made. And for most people, that's not that they do have the option. Okay, I don't feel like it, so I might opt not to. And to him, he said, if I do this, I'm going to do it this way.
yeah,
And once he made that decision, to him, any of the subtle decisions that people might take on a daily basis were things that he didn't think were an option. He's like, well, if I didn't want to do this every single day, I should have made that decision back then when I was making my commitments. But once I made a commitment, I'm not going to break the contract I have with myself.
yeah,
Um, and that's inspiring to hear, but it's not easy to practice.
yeah,
Um, a lot of people really struggle with it.
yep, for sure, for sure. Okay, we got a couple minutes left. Let's wrap it up with this. Just I saw this today. Seattle Times, Washington lawmakers are proposing it's almost a 10% tax on anyone in the state that's earning over $1 million a year. Thought this was interesting. If you're listening to the All In podcast, they talk a lot about this sort of similar thing with California. Not exactly the same, but kind of the same. And like I think both roads lead to the same to the same ending eventually. But I just thought we would talk about it real quick. You know, what are your thoughts? Let's just start there.
Yeah, I think well, I think it's a long term. I touched on it a little bit earlier. It doesn't surprise me that more at first I found it very shocking and it actually kind of angered me at first. I'm like, oh, come on, people, don't you like study history? Don't you know where things are going with these socialistic politics? But people most people are not history buffs like me. That's just the truth. And you know, people don't, one thing's for sure is people do not like to be forced into change. And so when the markets are changing underneath their feet and they are forced to change, they will resist it. And my take on it is that all the things that we're seeing, such as state income taxes, take more money for the rich, give it to the poor, these more socialistic politics, come from people who say, like, look, we talked about it. Maybe the truth is they don't have a right to live in a prestigious city that has these high costs. But it doesn't mean that someone who grew up here isn't going to fight for it, and their vote has the same weight as everyone else's. So I don't find it surprising. It doesn't mean I agree with it. I think that my studying of history tells me that they're accidentally just. I mean, look, you want to know what socialism looks like? Look at North Korea. You know, it. Pe- the
It's good in
problem,
theory, but the problem is the humans are running the show, and we are just gorillas,
yeah,
with a lot of
worse, we're
animalistic.
chimps. The
That's
most
right. We
violent.
are we are
We're
animals inside.
all you could just go to your chat GPT or Gemini and ask it what are the horrific things that that chimpanzees do to each other in like territorial warfare. And when you read those things, after you're appalled by it, remember, those are our closest relatives. Then, if you do want to put your head in the sand and pretend you don't know what history looks like, ask ChatGPT or Gemini and say, okay, now compare it to the worst things that humans do to each other and tell me who's worse. And then watch what it tells you. And it's going to tell you, like, oh, yeah, the chimps are, you know, the chimps are barely hurting each other to the like, oh, they when they're fighting, they'll bite each other's faces off and rip each other's genitals off. Yeah, well, they're not dropping atomic bombs and killing millions of people at a time. They're not gassing each other like
Yeah.
industrial, execution. This is the intelligence that like people are naturally self-serving and socialistic community driven like kind of hive driven concepts in theory do really make a lot of sense, but you have to care about every person that's in the hive as much as yourself and your direct family, and that's not human behavior.
The
So it
numbers
just
are
doesn't.
too big. It might work in a neighborhood, even a city, though it's probably too big. You just
What's funny is that there's a comedian who I can't remember if I referenced him. His name is Jimmy Carr, and
yeah,
he
yeah.
actually, yeah, and he talks about it. He actually, someone asked him a question, and he's like, what do you think of our our republic driven democracy?" And he says it's a shit system. But unfortunately it's the best one that we have. And then he talks about why socialism doesn't work. He says we're all socialists because the quality of life you'll give your children without making the same contribution as you is equal to what you give yourself for the most part. So within our own direct family group, we are very socialist. And the minute it breaks outside of that, you start to care less. And then when it comes to the point of like you versus some other person who lives in your state that you've never met before, it's like, well, then fuck that guy.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't
for
care,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
And and there is a lot of like empathy that happens in certain kinds of like I think that there's a really um empathetic, you know, heart that comes from people who actually have wealth who want more to go to other people. It's just it's not they have to remember that some of these people who are very poor, like this is the hard part. I've seen this with like adoptions. This is the analogy I'm going to use. It reminds me of like people I know who have adopted very, very poor foster children from third world countries. A lot of these concepts of like think of people who are very wealthy who are like, hey, we shouldn't need gun control. We shouldn't even have guns. We should all like get along. It's a little hippie-ish like, and I'm okay giving some of my money to give to the poor. And we should all be more equal and blah blah blah. Like, yes, that progression of thought process is a good thing to talk about. And as we can elevate everybody, more of those conversations can be helpful. But the poorer you are, and this is why I think what's happening in Minnesota is happening. You get these Somalians who come over here and they're very, very poor. I've met people who foster very, very poor kids from third world countries. And I've heard the stories of how many, and I've met these kids and they're wonderful kids, but I hear the stories of what the first 3 to 4 years was like parenting those kids, and they're like wild animals.
Yeah.
And the more poor you are, the more that self-centered focus happens. So as you try to give more resources to those people, if they're still in that
It's survival.
very
It's like a survival instinct.
survival scarcity mindset,
Yeah.
they will abuse what's given to them. And it has to be monitored and controlled. You can't just do it without any kind of monitoring control. So that's why it's
Yeah.
hard for me to answer some of these questions because I'm like, well, I think some of those progressions can make sense, but you can't, it has to be monitored, it has to be done right, and it can't be abused. And it's natural for people who are the have-nots to want to abuse it because they've just never had it before. And to them, it's a form of survival.
Yeah. I think, yeah. Yeah. I think I'm going to take like just a little bit of a different approach. I just was thinking about this. I think what I kind of hope happens without all the bad stuff that will happen if I say what's going to happen. But I kind of hope what happens. I think this is this tax, Washington's proposed income tax, California's proposed income tax. I think that these are all the result of such a ridiculous amount of mismanagement of funds that are actually already in the government. And I think eventually, I mean, maybe not. Hopefully, though, it's going to stop at some point. You know, I think if Washington has this tax, California's tax for sure, because it's just so crazy and outlandish. People are going to leave, and then you're going to lose all of the tax revenue, particularly with California, is a little bit different, right? Because they already have income tax. But if you lose the top 1% of the wealth in California, like you're going to run out of money, you know? And I think that
Yeah,
there people, the government right now, and this goes even to the Minnesota thing, yeah, people will take advantage of a corrupt system, but let's just make the system not corrupt, you know, like let's not, because somebody is rubber stamping these payments and all of these things that are happening, because it's not a sophisticated scheme, right? There's an address where there's no kids, there's no business. The name on the sign is spelled incorrectly. Like this doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to get to the bottom of some of these, you know.
right.
And I think that just that's kind of the tip of the iceberg on a lot of this stuff, and you know, I think people will just leave if you
Yeah,
do this,
I agree with all those things. I'm not saying that the politics are correct and that they're going to work, but I do have empathy to understand how it's happening and that and not to be surprised when it does happen because I'm like, well, I can't expect everyone to be history nerds like me. Um, and so if where they are feels unfair and it feels like the system is rigged
Yeah,
against you,
for
then
sure.
the only solution you're hearing is you need to pick up your bags and move to a completely different state that works. And you're like, I don't
Yeah,
want to do that.
but I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the people that would be facing this tax leaving.
I know, but what's happening is that the people who feel the way I'm talking about resist leaving. They continue to live their lives in a system that feels like it is rigged against them. So then they vote for things like this, and then it drives different people away instead of them.
Oh, right. Yeah, but what they don't, yeah, but the
When the
programs and
upper
things
middle
like,
class in our area shifted from Boeing employees to tech workers, people at the Boeing level and below feel like they're being pushed out. And instead of
yeah,
leaving, some people will leave. Some of them will fight to stay. And when they fight to stay, they'll vote for things that are better favoring to them. And then the income
yeah,
tax, then the rich people leave, and then the jobs go away, and then blah 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 blah. Right.
yeah,
And so, and I've thought about it, and like, is it really that bad? I mean, it feels like when you create lots of wealth and you try to retract back, it's a very painful process. People want it to go back the way things were, but I feel like a city that was once bigger that retracts back never goes to like, for instance, like I've been to Tucson where cost of living is cheaper, real estate's cheaper, everything is cheaper. And it's like, but think of a city that boomed and then retracts back like Detroit, during like the, Industrial Revolution and everyone's
yeah,
buying American cars. Detroit was a booming city. And look, as it retracts back after the population goes up, it creates a lot of crime, drug use. New Jersey is also an example of that. So I think people sometimes they fantasize about it going back to the way it was, but unfortunately, I've history also says that once you've grown to be a bigger city and more urban, that if you try to retract back to a lower cost of living, it doesn't look like what it would have looked if it never had done it in the beginning. You know, cities that were just always affordable that never got super expensive are a lot more pleasant to live in. You know,
yeah. It's a circle of life. Like, let's go. Okay, this happens everywhere all the time,
yeah,
right? I mean, if you are not adapting to the circumstances around you, you are going to fall behind. It is just how it goes, you know. And it feels great for people to tell you there's a relief coming and there's a handout coming, but you have to, this goes right back to what we were talking about about being successful. If you are a software engineer right now and you are waiting to get your next job, what you should be doing instead is thinking to yourself, how can I take a left turn with my skills and learn some new skills and go get something else potentially?
hmm,
You know what I'm saying? Like you
right.
you uh, instead of crying about AI, like you have to go learn AI. Like instead of crying about horses being gone, you have to go get in the car industry. you know. Same with the internet. Same with everything. Like there have always been new things coming on. You can be, I don't know, let's say you can be like Kodak and Blockbuster, you know, or I don't know, there's got to be some companies that have been like very adaptive over time. Those companies, you
Hmm.
know, like you have to keep moving forward, keep progressing. Okay, all right, let's wrap it up. We gotta wrap it up.
Yeah.
All right. Any closing thoughts? Any closing thoughts before we close the book on today's episode?
Yeah. I think I don't always have the answers. I just have an understanding of why things happen. And I think that what you just said, yeah, people just have to adapt. It's easier for us to say it because we are the entrepreneurs who are stubborn and always
100%.
have to adapt to the market. And that isn't most people out there. So I see where they're coming from. I'm not them. So all I can do is do my best to try to understand where they're coming from. But, you know, it when the world is changing, whether you want to be a person of change or not, you're going to have to do it. And so, but luckily, I think for most of our listeners, they're probably coming more for the entrepreneur side and in the space where other people are resisting change. And if you're willing to embrace it, there's usually lots of opportunity.
Yeah, agree. Agree. Okay, well said. I have nothing. That was great. All right. That is it for today's episode of the Business Barbershop Podcast. I'm Chris,
I'm Keen.
and we are done. See ya.
See you guys soon.